Welcome to Disruption Now. I'm your host and moderator, Rob Richardson. And of course, this is part of our series where we are teasing out some of our mainline speakers at MidwestCon. And with me is Lee Mossbacker, who is a man about town. He's got a lot of accomplishments. So a PhD in physics. You know, as a fellow nerd myself, I have to say, wow. I'm an electrical engineer. I don't have a PhD in physics, but so he has a PhD in physics. He's also created an over $200 million fund. But most importantly, in another fund, he has several funds. But he's also, what he's really passionate about is making sure we have disruption around the investment market, particularly the VC market, because he believes, as I do too, that the system and the models are broken. And he started Serenus, which is a partner of MidwestCon and has been in his second year. And I also believe in the mission. It's making VC investments more equitable, more transparent, and using technology to do that. So, Lee, it's good to have you on, man.
Hey, thank you for having me. I've been a fan for a long time.
Yeah, man, and it's we've been working together for a long time behind the scenes. It's going to be great to have you you were at the inaugural MidwestCon.
I was.
Yep, and now you're going to be at our third annual. It's going to be hosted here at the 1819 Innovation Center. I'm looking forward to hosting you. And part of the goal is to connect more of the Midwest, and that includes Columbus and Cincinnati being more intentional about working together. We're going to have ecosystem builders from Chicago too. I just got back from Chicago Tech Week. A lot of great things going on there. The physics nerd in you, I have to talk to you about the quantum mechanics piece on that, but we'll talk about later quantum computing. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But for now, I want to talk to you about, your venture right now, your newest venture, Serenus, and the problem that you're tackling, which you talked about being venture capital being broken. What about venture capital is broken, and how are you addressing that with your new venture, Serenus?
Well, I've been all over finance and liquid markets, and I think the primary thing about being an expert is you need three real criteria to understand if you're improving and getting good. In liquid markets, clearly a fair and a market is number one. Number two is you need immediate feedback in the market if you're correct or wrong. And the third thing is you need to just do lots of shots on goal. Now, if you're trying to start a hedge fund or you're trying to get into other areas of finance, the bare minimum that you need to do is you need to have a thesis that's quantitative, that has some specific edge, usually around data, and then you back test for 5 years, and then you take your own money and you forward test for 3 years. And then when you get to that point, you can start shopping the idea around to people. Venture has none of those three qualities. A lot of the thesis around ventures, shooting from the hip, it's a demographic area, geographic area, a sector, but there's really no edge, and we're moving deeper and deeper into technologies to where you really need people that have 20 to 30 years of domain expertise to be evaluating these deals at scale and with a lot of them, because you can't just take one or two opinions because they vary. So we've created Serenus to really be that analysis engine for venture. And I think it's unique. We bring in experts from industry. We bring in analysts that buy and sell late stage equities, and we put those two groups around a deal, and then we launch a fund around them, a virtual fund around them, and give them economics around that. So the story is long, but I think that you need experts in the equation.
Yeah, you need experts in the equation, as you said, because there's a lot of bias in the equation, because we talked about venture capital being broken. What you're essentially saying is, like, I'll just say it. I don't know if you're saying it, but I'm going to improvise a little bit. Most of the investment is led by the coast. And I found that even with the investments being made here in a lot of places, a lot of times, and you correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of times the local investments in Ohio and other places tend to follow what the others do. They don't tend to lead, and then that still creates this bubble, this narrow perspective, in that you're supposed to be having these funds that are investing here locally, but a lot of times, from what I understand, for the most part, they only invest when the West Coast and others invest, still kind of recreating the problem because, again, you don't have those domain experts. Is that a correct assessment, or would you see it differently?
Yeah, and the money's locked up for 10 or 15 years, so you never really know if you're correct. And that cycle is way too long. It disenfranchises a lot of founders. It leaves a lot of capital on the table. I think if you add in a liquidity portion and a safe harbor of analysis, you can unlock another $500 billion into venture. Because now you've got a doctor or someone in real estate that knows they can get in and out of the deal over a year or 2 to 3 years, not 10 to 15. And they also trust the analysis of where the company is and what the snapshot of collective wisdom is around that company. They feel safe there. I think that will drive 10x the venture investment. I really question whether you can replicate a Bay Area model in the Midwest or in the mid-continent. Really.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
but what about that challenge? Is it like, so when people say, because I think that's always the kind of framing of the argument that we need to create the Silicon Valley of the heartland. I think that's what they say, right? You challenge that notion to say you don't think that's even a wise move to go. Why not?
I don't think it's wise because there's not a lot of follow-on capital, and you could say, well, we'll create the follow-on capital. Well, the partnerships aren't there. Everything's a little bit slower to move. It's a little bit more bureaucratic. It doesn't have the 30 to 50 years of venture culture baked into your corporate partners. And I think even if you go there's a little amount of capital available for M&A. And I think that if you go public, you're going to have, for example, an insurance company locally competing in the same IPO market as a company in the Bay Area. The capital to bring into that IPO from the public markets is 100x what you would get in a company that's located here in Columbus. And so that's just a macroeconomic truth. Now, if you have a severe competitive advantage over that Bay Area company, then that's a different problem. But I think that trying to replicate, I don't know if you know the story of the cargo cults.
I don't, no.
Yeah, so at the end of World War II, we were island hopping, heading to mainland Japan, and we would come onto an island and we would put down an airstrip, air control tower. People in uniforms would stand out on the airfield and wave down planes. The planes would land and unload a bunch of supplies, food, weapons. At the end of the war, we abandoned those. And indigenous people, what they would do is they would build an airstrip. They would build a traffic control tower. They would make uniforms. And they would stand at the end of the runway trying to flag down airplanes. And the planes never landed. I think a lot of what we're doing here in the Midwest is very cargo cult. Just from who's coming in, where's the money coming from in venture? How are the exits occurring? How do you grow a company to fit here? We have a lot of talented people, but we also have a lot of brain drain in areas that are at the forefront of venture. So we have to kind of be realistic about it. And
I completely agree. Go ahead.
No, our approach is radically different.
Yeah, so let's talk about the approach so I can kind of break it down and understand it. So it sounds like it's several things. Number one, you're getting experts in real time to make evaluations on these deals. So you're not just relying on someone who doesn't necessarily have deep knowledge within a specific arena, let's say quantum physics, because that's something that's coming up, right? And have people just say, oh, this sounds like a good idea, but they have no understanding of quantum physics or how things work. Number two, but it also sounds like you lessen the amount of time that your money has to be exposed if you're an investor. Is that correct? And is that correct? So how do you do that? Like, how would you differentiate the model in a way that's still, sustainable and profitable?
Yeah, well, rebalancing portfolios is a very powerful technique in other areas of finance. Really understanding your risk and how to benchmark those against other types of asset classes is really critical. And you never see any of that in venture just because, people will lock up money for 10 to 15 years. Now, the venture capitalists, they want to lock up money for that long. The founders typically want that speculation. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. when you go to a real market or you get acquired, the valuation is going to be real, and we know that the value of that company over the long term always, if not most of the time, decreases from its initial IPO value. In fact, you can predict it. There's a couple things you can do. We'll talk about that later, but you can predict when these companies start to really lose their value when they come into the IPO market, at least like 80% of them. So our whole thing is like, okay, well, venture capital is motivated to hype valuations in later stages. Founders are motivated to increase valuations in later stages. So why don't we get in super early? Let's wrap a fund around the brightest brains in the world. Some of them are in Columbus, some of them are in San Francisco, some of them are in New York. Let's figure it out. Let's just do a very high level sort of analysis of all the 5 factors that we care about as a fund and a platform. Let's write the check, and let's write 1,200 checks. Because in the aggregate, venture does okay. Let's write a bunch of checks, but let's watch those companies and let's get data on those companies up until about Series A. And then we have a liquidity partner that we will sell those equities off of Serenus to that liquidity partner at a discount. And then we compound that over the next 3-year cycle. So there's really intelligent strategies and other types of finance. You can be average.
That's awesome. So if I get this straight, most of the time in venture capital, it's just, Howard decides he wants to start a venture capital fund. Howard's well connected. Howard raises the money. Howard has a fund. Is that about right?
Yeah, and it's built on storytelling, which is scary in finance. It's built on networks. It overlooks a ton of people. It's built around feelings and perceived impact in communities, and it's never built on how do we build the best businesses and how do we build the best economic development engines that the world has seen.
Yeah, I heard Mark Cuban in your point say this about Mark Zuckerberg, and he literally pointed out Ohio, and I think people felt shots fired when he said this, but he said, like, if you take Mark Zuckerberg, this is Mark Cuban talking about Mark Zuckerberg, and you plant him same time, same founder, same drive, and you put him in Miami of Ohio, said Facebook does not launch a scale at the level that it does because you're not next to proximity of money that can scale at that time and an effort that you need for it to launch. And I thought about that, and I think people from Ohio, even me a little bit, everyone's a little prideful. You're like, well, how do you know that? But the answer is, it's kind of true, like, because there hasn't really been many, it's not replications of that here, and not because we don't have the talent. It's because, as you said, we don't have proximity to the money at scale that's needed to launch something like a Facebook at that level. And so I think what you're doing is amazing if it can get to that problem of really making sure that proximity of money can be next to experts, next to founders launching at the same time. But of course, you're gonna have challenges because because your model, what you're seeking to do is you're seeking to have data win over emotions, over the good old boys network, over what traditionally has happened. But people will justify the system that's in front of them, even if it's unjustifiable, even with numbers, because people believe something. As one of my favorite authors, Robert Greene, says, he talks about the laws of human nature, and the first one he talks about is being irrational. And he says the first key to being rational is to recognize that you're irrational. People make decisions with their emotions, human beings naturally, and then justify the decisions later. How do you go about tackling that? Because I think that's a big hurdle.
Well, I kind of view, look, our approach is, so you can have an average performing predictive tool in other investment classes, but your strategy is unique, and the strategy is where you get the alpha. So our whole thing is, we actually think we're not trying to make things, we're trying to filter like some nonsense out in the beginning. We're trying to bring light to areas where we think that there's kind of a pump and dump, using pension fund money to pump and dump companies onto the public markets. Like we care about that. But I'd say like so we think that we're going to get a little bit of alpha there. But it's not, it's not what's going to drive the investment in Serenus, the multiples there. It's going to be the fact that we think we're going to perform average, but our strategy is going to be rapidly different. So the strategy that we use is compounding these multiples of liquidity to get the 8 to 10x over 10 years versus other funds where it's simply, are you lucky that you hit a decacorn? And that's really the only difference between a great fund, a good fund, and a bad fund, is that they hit a unicorn, a decacorn, maybe a few unicorns, and then the ones that didn't. Because they're looking for one hit that covers 100x and sends,
it makes up for all the losses. My understanding, let me know if my math is off, but like 70 or 80% of the funds actually, of the investments made by funds actually fail. They look for that one unicorn or what's the term you say for 10 million? I forgot what did you say is for something that evaluates high at the 10 level. They look for that to make up for all the losses, but most of them are losses, correct?
Yeah, most of them are losses. And, I think to build a vibrant culture, because it's not just the money. You could throw money at it, and we're still going to have the cargo coal problem.
Yes.
I think there needs to be higher entropy in the local markets. That means from founders to opportunities. We typically try to
define what you mean. Everybody's not into physics.
Just that there's a lot of variation in the marketplace. There's a lot of different things in the marketplace. Ohio has a tendency to really focus on things that they believe they're good at, and that's fine. But I don't know if it makes it really appealing for a startup culture. If you're investing primarily in biotech, is that going to excite young founders coming out of great schools or even the schools that we've got now to do things? So I think it's okay to lean into that. But I think you need a lot of different types of founders from a lot of different types of backgrounds, doing a lot of different types of businesses. And if you're going to provide that culture and not approach it from like the investment banking side, which is where I see most of the people here that are really analyzing deals, you approach it from the venture side, which is just write the check. It's a power law, filter the nonsense, and you're going to get a 2 to 3x return over 10 years. To me, that should be more what's going on in the markets here, but it's not. So it's frustrating for a lot of people. It's probably frustrating for a lot of your audience.
Absolutely. Talking to Lee Mossenbacher, who's going to be a speaker at MidwestCon. Also, he launched the company Serenus, which is a sponsor of MidwestCon, and they are disrupting venture capital, making it more equitable, making it more, frankly, profitable, and also changing the model so it allows more to invest and more to be and not having money locked up as long for the 10 to 12 year period, for just a couple year period. I want to ask you about bias. So because we kind of hit it around it, we talked about it. How are you going to make sure that you reduce bias as much as possible? I think we're all human beings, so there's bias in what we do, but how might your approach, I say, help address bias, reduce inequities, and provide more opportunities for all?
So part of our technology is how do we assess the collective wisdom of our experts? So I view bias in a couple ways, but let's say that there's systematic bias, and then there's deal bias, right? The systematic bias, I think it's a little bit easier to see if people are on our platform, what deals they're investing in, what types of people they're investing in, and then rearrange their access to those deals based on their performance on the platform. So if you're an investor that's on the platform, that's never invested in a female founder but has written 100 checks, I don't know how we tackle that. I have some ideas, but that's probably not, you're not going to see the best deals, I don't believe, from our platform. So that's like one way to manage the systematic bias. We just won't push, deals to those people because we can target who we want deals to syndicate with. If now the deal bias itself, I think we eliminate through sort of how we weight individual performers, and it goes back to the liquidity and the analysts that are going to purchase the early stage equities. They're giving us the best that we can get right now of a liquid market. They're telling us what they like, and then we look at how the experts are performing on the analysis phase, and we can kind of, with law of large numbers and how we weight individuals and how we do attribution, we believe we can reduce a lot of the deal bias.
Yeah. So you're using data all throughout. You're using data for, if I'm trying to just extrapolate it in the easiest way as possible, you're using data here to extrapolate how each one of your investors invests. You're using data to see how the money is, of course, improving over time. You're using data to figure out how to evaluate which experts are going to judge each type of investment. And so I would like to just figure out, like, on a really simple, easy way, if you can explain this. I'm going to have you do this first. If you could explain in one sentence how Serenus is changing venture capitals, how would you explain it?
We're getting the best people in the world to evaluate a deal, and we're funding it rapidly.
Yes,
that's it.
So you're doing that, and so how would that work in principle? You fund it like let's say, Rob Richardson wants to approach. He's got a concept that takes, I'll just throw something out, uses blockchain and AI for looking at cybersecurity, and has found a way to has a SaaS model. Like, what would it look like on the founder side? What would it look like on the investor side?
Yeah, so we're kind of like this mix of Y Combinator and Robinhood. So the idea is you come in, you log on to the app, which is in the App Store. You can submit an opportunity, basically an elevator pitch around your idea. This is a 30-second to 60-second elevator pitch. Leave it all in the field, and we basically give you a pass or no pass on that elevator pitch. If there's a no pass, we provide you a detailed list of all the feedback that you got, so you can give it another shot. If you did get a pass, then we ask for like 4 or 5 more videos around the real important aspects of your team, your business, your market, your traction, and the fit of the product in the market. And then we take that, and our intelligence is designed to take snippets of that and send it to the right people, so that they're not spending tons of time looking through all these materials. We send them just a snapshot of the thing that they're going to look at. This team, you're an expert in AI, in Gen AI. Here's the team that's trying to get this done. Here's the product. They score it on 3 dimensions, and we take the scores and we build a Serenus score from that.
So how do the experts get paid for this? Are they doing this? Are they get early access to investing? Like, what would the incentives for the experts look like? The investors are obvious; they get to invest and make money. The founders are obvious; they get money. What do the experts get for this?
Yeah, so we share all of our equity positions with the founders, or the experts. So the experts will, after they do deals, after we fund deals, because ultimately it's us funding them. And I think that's what differentiates us from a matchmaker, is that we're actually doing the funding. So we fund the deals, and then in their portfolio, it pops up, here's your holding in ABC Corp.
Got it. No, so they get a portion for a company that ends up getting funded.
Yeah, and luckily our securities lawyer is a former GLG guy, so
yeah,
got to structure all this for us.
And I guess the investors, because it sounds like a crowdfunding, still have to be accredited investors though when they come in and check in.
Yeah, only accredited investors. We use Verify to when you sign up. So investors we're going to start launching to investors here in November-ish. We've launched to experts and to founders here in beginning of August. It's actually in the App Store right now. But investors were on board in November.
Got it. Well, that's exciting. Look, you're doing some great work, Lee. Really appreciate all you've done for this state. There's not enough people pushing the envelope here, and we got to push faster, because I think one of the complaints I have about Ohio, as much as I love it, I still think we move way too slow, and I don't think we work enough together. And I'm thankful for all that you're doing, and looking forward to us doing more and really joining Cincinnati and Columbus and being intentional about building out this ecosystem, because it's the only way we're going to be able to advance ourselves. The state is too small to see each other as competitors. We have to really work through collaboration. And so I want to thank you for what you've done. Thank you for being a MidwestCon partner. really looking forward to seeing you. We have a lot of exciting things in store. So if you can stay here for specifically on the 4th and 5th, I think you will be very satisfied with the opportunities and the connections and the curation that we're going to do. So I appreciate your time and looking forward to seeing you soon at MidwestCon, brother.
Yeah, it's great. I love Cincinnati. It's a beautiful town. Some of the best deals I've seen. I mean, I've seen deals all over the country. Some of the best deals I've seen this year, one of them was out of Cincinnati.
All right. Well, love to hear that. Lee, look forward to seeing you. And I'm sure I'll be in Columbus soon, but if I don't see you soon, I'll see you in Cincinnati.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Talk soon.